Maryland football could be the worst team in the Big Ten.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you guys for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Maryland football could be the worst team in the Big Ten next year. So Maryland football, I don't think anybody else in the Big Ten has much possible variance as Maryland football has next year. I told a lot of different people and I recorded it and I said, Maryland football could potentially win a lot of games next year. They could. And I stand by that. And I honestly think that is true. But I also think there is a world where we're the worst team in the league. And I hate talking about it. I hate being negative about it. And nobody ever wants to be the worst team in college sports because in college sports, being the worst team doesn't mean you get to pick Cameron Ward or doesn't mean you get to pick Joe Burrow or you get to pick Trevor Lawrence or you get to pick one of these top end quarterbacks in the first round. It's like, oh, we get to start over with a brand new toy. We lost every game this year, but we get a really exciting time for our football program. This isn't the NFL. Being one of the worst teams in the Big Ten can kill the program. It can make kids decommit. It can make kids transfer. It can make kids realize they want to go to different places. There's so many different effects that have specifically on recruiting. I think Mike Locksley could be trouble for the worst team in the Big Ten. But when I look up and down this roster, when I look at this Maryland team, this team potentially could be the worst team in the Big Ten. They could be the worst team in the Big Ten. And I hate to say it, and I would never want it to happen like this, but I do think there's a possibility when you really look at it, when you look at this roster, when you look at how it's constructed, when you look at the inexperience, when you look at the lack of star power, the lack of horsepower, lack of high-end recruits in some areas. When you just look at it, it's a huge question mark just about at every single position group. And I don't know a team in the Big Ten that has this question mark at every single position group like we do. Maybe Purdue. I would have to really get into the roster and understand. But there's not a ton of teams in the country when you just look up and down, you're like, that's a question mark, that's a question mark, that's a question mark. And so the interesting part about it is I was reading an article that Washington had pulled out the SB Nation. You guys know SB Nation, the Washington page for that University of Washington, and of course we play Washington this year, which will be an interesting game. I don't know if Maryland's ever played Washington before, but that'll definitely be a game that I'll definitely be in tune for now that Washington's in the Big Ten and going out there. And I was reading their article because they, these websites like to talk about every single team they're going to play this year, a preview of the team, what they kind of are. And I wanted to read it and I wanted to see kind of where they were at with everything. And I thought it was really interesting the way they kind of talked about it. And I was like, maybe they're right. Maybe they know something that we don't. Maybe they're accurate. Maybe we're overhyping this team when realistically on paper, this team might be a bottom team in the conference. So I read the article and it said out of the Big Ten teams, they went through all the rankings and they talked about each position group, and this is where they had it. At quarterback, they had Maryland 17th in the Big Ten. They projected starter Malik Washington, which is, I don't want to say it's fair, but I saw an article I saw somebody on one of the Maryland Instagram page had Malik Washington as like a top 5 QB already in the Big Ten. And as much as I think he can get there, walking in day one, I don't think it's unreasonable to put him at the bottom. Like, I think Malik has to prove something to everyone before we're like, yeah, that kid's it. Yeah, that kid's the truth. Yeah, that's the type of guy that is going to carry this Maryland program. So having him ranked 17th in the quarterback, I honestly don't think is that crazy. I think it's interesting that they picked Malik to be the starter. I think he's going to be the starter as well, but I honestly don't think it's crazy. He hasn't played any snaps. He has to prove a little something. And then they went on to the running back position, and they ranked Maryland 16th in the Big Ten. They have Nolan Ray as a projected starter. Behind him, Iverson Howard. Behind him, Williams. And behind him, Bud Combs. And they said there's real reason for hope they hear, despite finishing very close to the bottom of the rankings. Ray had a Jonna Coleman like 4.2 yards per carry after contact as Maryland's backup last season and is an easy breakout candidate. But potential will have to carry the day because Ray has 255 of the 305 career offensive snaps at the position, with a pair of 3-star true freshmen coming in and second and third on the team. That's way less experience than just about anyone else in the conference, and there's a lot of risks inherent in relying that heavily on unproven guys with 0 combined college starts. It's interesting. I think it's fair. I like Nolan Ray, and I agree completely with what Washington's saying. But let's be real. Nolan Ray hasn't had much experience. He's showed stuff, but having him ranked as the 16th best back in, or the 16th best running back room in the Big Ten, I don't think it's that crazy. And then somewhere where I think it can be a strength of our team, the receiving room, they have us ranked 13th. Receivers was one of Maryland's strength last year with a pair of receivers who got selected in this year's NFL draft. That obviously means that both are now gone, and so it's a rebuild in the room. I think it's fair, honestly. Like, I think it can be I think it's a bit underrated. I think it's going to end up being really good. But who in the receiving room are we like, yeah, that's the guy to make us have a top 5 receiving room in the Big Ten? We can't say anyone. We like Octavian Smith. We like Jaleel Farouk. We like some of these guys, but nobody's been like, yeah, that guy's the reason we're a top receiving room in the Big Ten. And then the tight end room as the 15th best team room in the Big Ten makes sense. Dorian Fleming, we like, but who on earth is behind him? And then you move on to the offensive line, and they have it ranked 16th best in the Big Ten. So they think that the line is going to be a bottom team, and I can't argue that either. To be honest. And so I needed to say this. There's only 18 teams in the Big Ten. So that was just the offense side of things. So nearly everywhere on offense, they have us ranked at the bottom, basically at the bottom. And that overall total offense is good for 17th in the Big Ten to their calculations. And then they go into the defensive side of things, and things are just worse. They have our defensive line unit ranked 18th. That's the worst in the Big Ten. Here's my view on it. I agree pretty much everywhere on offense, like just based off of the numbers and where everything's at. You probably would rank Maryland's offense as one of the worst units in the Big Ten. Defensive line for Maryland football, we had a lot of transfers in there. I think it's going to surprise some people. I don't think people realize how good some of these guys are. I do think there's some quality. We got 5 transfers at the position. And they make a good point. They make a lot of good points in this article. It might be more quantity over quality in an attempt to rebuild the depth here. I do agree with that a little bit, but I do think it'll be better than the 18th best unit in the Big Ten or the worst unit in the Big Ten. And then they kind of continue to diss us with edge rushers, which is fair. I think edge rushing, I don't know who's going to rush the passer this year. They have guys like Anthony Reddick, Zahir Mathis, DJ Samuels, Neo Avery. It's not the best thing ever. So I kind of think that's fair. Linebackers, they have us 9th. They have that as our highest position group so far. Corners, they have us at 14, which I think is fair. There's a lot of question marks, but I do think there's some interesting players. Safety, they have us last. So overall team defense, they have us last. And the thing is, my point is, when I look at this article and I go through it, I'm like, where are they lying? I'm like, maybe they're a little bit lower on us than I think in the receiving room, maybe a little bit on the defensive line unit. That doesn't bring our overall ranking up that much. So there's 2 things that can be true for Maryland football. Maryland can be one of the bottom teams in the Big Ten on paper, but there's another thing that can also be true. But they also can win a lot of games this year. You look at the schedule, it's winnable. So these are one of those years where it's like, how does your coach impact winning? How does your coach elevate talent? How does your coach bring you to a different level? How does your coach allow you to win games? Because when you look at this Maryland team, they're not necessarily supposed to be very good, but they have a winnable schedule, which I think is interesting for the Terps this season with kind of the talent on the screen. You can't just count off a bunch of losses already. They have that schedule, and so we'll see if Loxley can elevate this talent, because there's a lot of people saying this roster isn't great, and it doesn't. It's not awesome. I think there's breakout candidates all over the place, but it's also like you want to have some guys solidified. Like, this isn't like a thing where it's like everybody else in the Big Ten has all new guys as well, and none of those guys are solidified either. Like, we for sure know Ohio State has a bunch of really good players. We for sure know Oregon does. Even the lesser schools, when you think about UCLA or Indiana might have the best receiver in the Big Ten outside of Jeremiah Smith. Like, there's a lot to worry about, I think, when you think of this Maryland team. And I go through articles like this, and I honestly thought this one was really well written. I thought they were pretty much spot on everywhere when talking about Maryland's team overall. So I do think it's interesting. I just think there's a lot of question marks. They also ranked our top 10 players, but maybe I'll leave that for another day. I think it's interesting. I think it's a little off there, but we'll talk about that another day. But I do think this is a huge year on Mike Loxley, but I'll say it. To go back to my beginning take, it's entirely possible that Maryland's the worst team of the Big Ten. It's entirely possible. On paper, after the year, how it ends up going is entirely possible. And we'll see what ends up happening. I think we're going to get a pretty good idea early on, but it is entirely possible, and it's entirely possible for the Terps to surprise a lot of people. Let's talk about Buzz Williams' comments. Buzz Williams had some interesting comments about Maryland basketball overall and the roster. We'll talk about that next. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already knowing the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling with FanDuel? You can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track all of my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride in the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it easy. It makes it feel easy to get in on part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can just bet $5 to get 115 bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. So there's an interesting article that came out about Buzz Williams and him being interviewed and everybody asking him some questions. And I did think it was good for us to talk about, because I think I think everything Buzz Williams says is interesting, and I did want to talk about it. Also, I kind of forgot about this. It is draft week for Derek Queen. He is projected to go on Wednesday, so we'll see if he ends up going as high or lower than what we think. But so more about this Buzz Williams thing. So during a recent interview with Big Ten Network, Williams explained his thought process during the rebuild. So he had an interview with Big Ten Network, and he's talking about rebuilding this Maryland basketball program and everything. It's always interesting in college sports. Like, we just made it to March Madness, made it to Sweet 16, but like, we're talking about a rebuild. It's weird. But this was his comments. I think we are going through it, even though the pace is significantly quicker than ever before. We try to make sure that we're putting together team number one, and that there was versatility in all the things you want to have and the capabilities of doing. We try to disperse in that relative talent, but also position and also their age, Williams said. We didn't want everyone to everybody be first to college, but we didn't want everybody to be in their last year either. So you can dictate a lot of that. And sometimes, whether there are 50-50 decisions, I think we tried to side the way with sustainability. Interesting. So he's saying, which I completely agree, and I think this is the exact right way to do it. He's saying when he built this roster, he didn't want a bunch of guys that were just freshmen and young guys, or just old guys that were older but only had 1 year of eligibility. he wanted a range of different types of players, a range of different types of pieces. And so he got different body types, he got different ages. And I noticed that because there's guys that are older, like Solomon Washington, and that have been around, like Pharrell Payne, even Elijah Sanders. But there's also guys that are younger, like George Turkson, of course, the freshman, Andre Mills. Like there's guys that are younger, Marquise Passmore, that are really talented as well. And I think that's the right way to build a roster. So I noticed that, and I've talked about that before, but I think it makes a lot of sense. And then he talked about how he will decide who is the, like, what kind of, how do we play as a team and these different things. And he said, we'll have to use, honestly, the month of June to diagnose what's best in regards to how we play, Williams said. I think there will be some remnants of what we've done the last few years, and it's too early. I think that's the job of a good coach, is put them in positions to be successful. And I've spent some time with them as people, not on an official visit, spend some time with them on the court, and we know exactly what's the best. So I think that's totally fair that he's kind of like, we're going to see how it fits together. We're going to take our time and let it kind of go and let it kind of get going in terms of Maryland basketball, instead of trying to just put it into trying to make a piece add or make a piece work, not how it's supposed to work. So I think that makes a lot of sense. So then Buzz Williams goes on and he talks about who his best players are, what the case is, and Buzz talks about Pharrell Payne. He said there's a couple of guys, including a name that's familiar to Big Ten fans, Pharrell Payne, who started at Minnesota. He was tremendous. He's never backed away from anything, not the work, not the pace, not the intensity, the language, or the way we coach both sides of the ball. He's a beautiful human being, outstanding person, and we'll need him to be really good on both sides for us. So I think Pharrell Payne is clearly kind of the headliner of this team. I feel like we made that pretty clear and obvious that Pharrell Payne's the guy. But I do think that it's an interesting kind of subject for Buzz Williams to be asked about who the star is, because I think a lot of people are recognizing the same types of problems that I am. It's like, who's your guy? Who's the main player? Who should we be excited about? Who should we be thinking about in terms of this team? And I think Pharrell Payne is definitely that. So that is interesting as well. And then he talked about why he wanted the Maryland job. He said, I've known Coach Willard since he was at Seton Hall and I was at Marquette. My time at VTech maybe helped me have a better view of the job at Maryland, and understanding the area and the state, the population of good players and good coaches. It wasn't very long. I think it was 9 days after we lost to Michigan that my family and I were on a plane to College Park. So he knew he wanted to go to Maryland. And then I want to add in one thing. He said, Solomon Washington has been with us 3 years. He's going into his last year. We know that Pharrell and Solo bring. We know what Pharrell and Solomon bring. We redshirted 2 players last year as freshmen who are joining us at Maryland. They have great growth years on the floor and in the weight room, and I'm excited about their future. So they're really excited about those 2 guys. It sounds like Turkson and Mills. Apparently those 2 guys I think could be really good for us next year. We'll see how they actually end up panning out, if they're going to be guys that play for us, like what kind of the case is for those 2 guys. Are those going to be guys that need another year to experience to get better? But I think they're going to be in the rotation. I think Turkson's an interesting player. I think Andre Mills is interesting. I don't know too much about them, except for that they redshirted last year, Texas A&M, so they still have all their years of eligibility. But I do feel like I have a pretty good idea. They were a high-level recruit, and it's clear that Buzz Williams really likes those couple of guys, and he said that in the interview. And there's other guys he could have talked about that were on the younger side, but he didn't. So that'll be interesting. And then he also talked about scoring. Someone asked, is the scoring going to be a problem? And he said, you have Miles Wright, Isaiah Watts, Elijah Sanders, all double-digit scorer a year ago. So that's interesting as well, that he brings up that we have all these different guys that have been double-digit scorers. It's just we don't have like a 18-point per guy, but you never know that those guys can come out. So we'll see exactly what happens, but it was good to hear Buzz Williams talk a little bit. There's definitely some interesting things. We're talking about a lot of articles this year, but I do think that, or articles today, but I do think that they're interesting to kind of hear what other people are thinking, when I know a lot of you guys probably won't end up actually reading them. So it's probably nice to hear in video form. I want to actually pivot my last section of the day. I actually want to talk about Derek Queen and him getting drafted. I want to talk about that a little bit. I'll talk about that next. So Derek Queen, I think might have the highest change and potential where he could go on Wednesday on the NBA draft. So tomorrow's the NBA draft, and we're gonna get an idea where Derek Queen gets to go. But to be fair, I have no idea where he goes. I think he could go anywhere, to be honest. I think he could go low. I think he could go high. I have no idea where Derek Queen is going to go. I think there's a lot of interesting articles out there about it, and there's a lot of people with different opinions on it and everything. But here's my thing. This is kind of how I see it. I think I see him as an edge 2 prospect. So the first tier, you got Mavericks. You're gonna have Cooper Flag. You're gonna have San Antonio. I don't know who they're gonna draft. VJ Edgecombe's interesting, but it sounds like Dylan Harper. And then the 76ers, I think Edgecombe, and then the Hornets might go Ace Bailey. And then there's the next tier of NBA draft guys, and Derek Queen, I think, is in that tier where you have a guy like Derek Queen, who I think can be really solid, obviously, and be a really good player. And then you have other guys like Jeremiah Fears and Kamamalu Lau at Duke. I think I'm saying his name right. Kaparis Draconis, who we played at Illinois. Carter Bryant. You have some of these other guys. But here's the thing. I've seen a couple of mock drafts that have Derek Queen sliding down to OKC, which I think could be really interesting fit. I think if he slides down to OKC fit or down to the OKC pick, I almost guarantee they take him. That's a team that they're ready to win. They just won the championship. They don't want some guy that they can develop and process and sit him forever. They want a guy that can help them win now. Plus, they have 50 million picks. They can use this pick on somebody that actually matters, and maybe they trade out of it. Maybe they go somewhere else. But I do think him at OKC is interesting. So I think the highest he potentially could go, it's really interesting. A lot of people have Ace Bailey dropping a lot. I think the highest he could go is probably 6 to the Wizards, I'd say. And then I think, honestly, I'll be honest, I'm not ever going to lie to you guys. Derek Queen's one of those players that you can have such such differing opinions on him. Some people are going to be really high on him. Some people are going to really like him. Some people aren't, and that's just the way it is. And I think it's fair. I think that's kind of who Derek Queen is. He's that weird kind of build, not the best athlete, but he's going to be one of the most skilled guys on the court. He's going to be one of the best skilled guys on the team. And it's do you want to take a chance of a guy that potentially might not have all the athletic tools? Maybe defensively is a question mark, but has a lot of skill and is one of the more skilled guys in the draft. It's just a really question mark of what you like, what you want to do, what do you believe in today's basketball, what your style is. Because some teams, Derek Queen's not going to be a fit on. Cooper Flag, the number one pick, Dylan Harper, VJ Edgecombe. There's not a team that wouldn't want those guys. But Derek Queen, it's kind of a taste. When you get down in the draft, it starts becoming a taste. And I just can see him sliding a bit, but I can also see him going really early. Kind of like Maryland football, a lot of variance in what can happen. That's all we have for today. Thank you guys for listening to Locked On Terps. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We're every day talking Maryland football, basketball. So thank you guys for listening to Locked On Terps.